So I've seen a recent study going around social media saying that free weights and machines are the same for athletic performance. To be more specific, I've seen bodybuilders reference the study and act like they won the World Cup or like they've won the UFC championship with a 5th round head kick KO. Seeing this, I figured I'd take a deeper dive into this study and then do a proper free weight versus machine exercises comparison, aka athletic bodybuilding versus bodybuilding. The study these bodybuilders are referencing is a recent study called Adaptations in Athletic Performance and Muscle Architecture Are Not Meaningfully Conditioned by Training Free Weight versus Machine-Based Exercises. So if you just look at the title, you think free weights and machines are the same for athletic performance. But unlike brain-dead bodybuilders, I actually read the abstract instead of just the title. It's pretty funny that bodybuilders just read the title and got so excited they didn't read the abstract. But because I'm actually educated and know how to read studies, I actually looked at the abstract. The first thing I thought of when I read the title was, what is athletic performance? I mean, just saying athletic performance is very broad and it doesn't make sense if you're not looking into specific attributes of athletic performance. But I'll get into the different attributes later in this video. The attributes analyzed in this study were vertical jump, upper limb anaerobic power, change of direction, balance, and sprint capacity, with the results showing no difference between each of these groups for all of these attributes, except for upper limb anaerobic power, which the machine group won, and then balance and change of direction, which the free weight group won. There are 3 main takeaways I got from this study. Number 1, they used the term athletic performance very broadly and didn't look at all the attributes that contribute to athletic performance. Number 2, the title is very misleading and free weights actually won more attributes than the machine-based group, with free weights winning balance and change of direction, and the machine group winning upper limb anaerobic power. And number 3, why are they looking at so many anaerobic capacity and power attributes when there is no speed component when you're lifting weights to increase strength? I mean, this is so dumb, but I'll explain it in simpler terms so you can understand. First, you have to understand the difference between strength and power, because a lot of people think strength and power are the same thing. Strength is how much force you can produce, while power has a speed aspect and it is how much force you can produce in the shortest amount of time. A simple way to look at it is strength is low speed strength and power is high speed strength. When you're lifting weights to build strength and muscle, you're always going to be doing low speed strength. So I have no idea why they were heavily testing high speed strength or power. An example is a chest press and a bench press. Whichever one you're doing, if you're doing it to build strength or increase muscle, then obviously you're not going to do it fast. If you see me bench press, I'm not doing it very fast. So obviously I'm going to be developing strength, but not power. But if you're trying to develop your power, then you're going to do something like plyometrics where you're doing each rep fast. So it's obvious why free weights and machines would tie in most aspects on anaerobic capacity and power. So it baffles me why they tested this so heavily, but now since I debunked these stupid bodybuilders who don't know how to read a study, I'll actually go over all the attributes of athletic performance and assign points and do an athletic bodybuilding versus bodybuilding or free weight versus machine showdown. The first attribute of athletic performance is going to be strength, aka low speed strength, because as I mentioned before, generating force fast is different from low speed strength, with strength being the maximum amount of force that your muscles can produce. And this is an easy point to give. Athletic bodybuilding will easily win the strength attribute. Some of you may be confused, but in my shorts I like to talk a lot about true strength and how machines generate fake strength. An example I used was a short where a 15-year-old girl did a bunch of weight on a leg press. Props to her for doing that much weight at 15 years old, but that's not true strength because a leg press won't translate to daily activities and sports as well as a squat. And the main reason why is because the squat has a core demand. Every sports activity has a core demand. This is why strength and conditioning professionals use the squat to test lower extremity strength and not a stupid leg press, which is needed in all sporting activities, as I mentioned earlier. If you have a weak core, then you don't have a solid foundation to generate force from. An analogy I like to use is jumping from concrete versus sand. Because sand is not as stable, you're not able to jump as high as if you were jumping from concrete. Now think of it as sand being a weak, lazy bodybuilder's core and the concrete being a super stud athletic bodybuilder like myself. This is why I state that a lot of these huge bodybuilders don't have true strength, because it doesn't matter how much force your muscles can generate if you don't have a solid core to generate force from. So clearly athletic bodybuilding or free weights takes this point. The second attribute of athletic performance is anaerobic power. And like I mentioned earlier, power has a speed attribute. Unlike strength, power isn't how much force you can generate, but how much force you can generate in the smallest amount of time. An example of anaerobic power is a vertical jump. There's a reason why in order to increase vertical jump, you do plyometrics, because there's a speed component to it rather than doing squats where it's very low speed. So who takes the point for anaerobic power? As I mentioned earlier, it's a tie and it should be obvious, but these bodybuilders for some reason act like they're so shocked that it's tied between free weights and machines. As I mentioned before, the best way to increase power is to do plyometrics because there's a speed component to them. If you do boxing or any kind of martial art, I actually have an MMA power training program where I show you exercises that will help you increase your punching speed and power. The next attribute will be anaerobic capacity. Anaerobic capacity is very similar to anaerobic power, but anaerobic capacity is for moderate duration activity. A more anaerobic power can be something like a vertical jump or a punch where it lasts just a couple seconds. And just like anaerobic power, anaerobic capacity will be a tie between athletic bodybuilding and bodybuilding. And like I said before, this should be obvious, but apparently it's not. The next attribute is local muscular endurance. Local muscular endurance is the ability of certain muscles or muscle groups to perform repeated contractions against a sub-maximal resistance. An example of this is a fighter's ability to prevent shoulder fatigue because of how often they're moving their arms, or a soccer player's ability to prevent leg fatigue, especially later in matches. And again, this one would be a tie because athletic bodybuilding and bodybuilding don't typically train in higher rep ranges because the main goal would be strength and hypertrophy. In order to increase local muscular endurance, you'd be doing 12 to 20-ish reps with only 30 seconds. And I can promise you now, you've rarely seen someone at the gym do that many reps with that little rest time. I actually use an example of this kind of training with Andrew Tate, where he does a high rep range of overhead presses to increase his shoulder endurance for boxing. You could argue that athletic bodybuilding would win this attribute, and because in sports you're using your own body weight and these bodybuilders are massive, the athletic bodybuilders would actually have less resistance to overcome during a game. But since I'm a really nice guy, especially to bodybuilders, I'll call this one a tie. If you're looking for a great athletic bodybuilding workout, which you probably will be after you see the rest of these results, my brother and I just launched the Ultimate Athletic Bodybuilding subscription, where not only do you get a great athletic bodybuilding program each month, but you get access to a private athletic bodybuilding community with like-minded athletic bodybuilders, and get a weekly Q&A call with my brother and myself. I'll leave an exclusive link in the description where you'll get 25% off your first month. The next attribute will be aerobic capacity, which is essentially long duration energy, aka cardio. And I'm gonna have to give the aerobic capacity point to athletic bodybuilding. This is due to the fact that these bodybuilders get way too big and this leads to worse cardio. Having that much muscle mass is like running with a weighted vest. Obviously you're gonna be more tired. Not only do you weigh more and have to carry more weight, but because they have more muscle mass, you have to use way more oxygen. An example of this is Cain Velasquez and Francis Ngannou. Because Ngannou is so big and has so much muscle, he actually requires more oxygen than Cain Velasquez to fuel his muscles. And that's a big reason why Cain Velasquez is known for his cardio and Francis Ngannou is notorious for how crap his cardio is. So yeah, the aerobic capacity point goes to athletic bodybuilding. The next athletic performance attribute is agility. Agility is the ability to stop, start, or change direction due to a stimulus. I feel like a lot of people, when they consider agility, think of just changing direction, but never consider the stimulus needed for agility. For example, if I laid cones out for you and you knew exactly when you were going to change direction, that wouldn't be agility. But if you're like Messi, who changes direction based on where defenders are, or if a defender is making a tackle, that's agility. And the agility point will go to athletic bodybuilding, as this study shows that changing direction is actually better for athletic bodybuilding. While there's a huge reaction component to agility, being able to change direction faster will obviously help for someone's agility. So the agility point goes to athletic bodybuilding. The next attribute would be speed. This is very similar to anaerobic capacity, but anaerobic capacity is more broad and speed is just how fast you can run. And as I mentioned before, because there's no speed aspect to typical bodybuilding routines, this will be a tie. Again, I could easily give this point to athletic bodybuilding because the bodybuilders are so big and that actually wouldn't help with their speed. I'll call it a tie because I'm such a nice guy. The next attribute will be flexibility. The simple way to describe flexibility is the range of motion around a joint. And the flexibility point will be given to athletic bodybuilding. Because bodybuilders build these huge muscles, this actually decreases the range of motion around a joint. I'm assuming you guys have seen some funny videos of these bodybuilders who can't grab a piece of tape around their back because of how much muscle they have. So the excessive muscle mass plus the very limited flexibility training in bodybuilding routines will lead to very little flexibility and range of motion. So this point will go to athletic bodybuilding. And if you disagree with me on this one, look at Leon Edwards' head kick Kamaru Usman. And the final two athletic performance attributes will be balance and stability. And I'll be combining these two because they're very similar. And I'm pretty sure you see this coming, but athletic bodybuilding easily wins both of these points and they'll wipe the floor with bodybuilders in terms of balance and stability. The reason why athletic bodybuilding wins the balance attribute is because bodybuilders like to sit down, lay down, or use these lazy machines, so they're not working on their balance. An example is a stupid Bulgarian split squat modification where you do it on a machine. Unilateral exercises like the Bulgarian split squat are great to improve your balance, but bodybuilders use this stupid machine and take away the whole balance demand, aka they won't work on their balance. Another example is the squat and the leg press. While the balance demand on the squat is not as much as a unilateral exercise, the balance demand is still there, while in a leg press, there's no balance demand. And the study actually showed that balance was better for free weights. And the last one is stability, and clearly athletic bodybuilding wins this one as well. As I mentioned before, these bodybuilders like to do all these exercises sitting down or laying down, which takes away the stability demand of doing these exercises standing up. As I mentioned before, the squat has a huge stability demand where the core is heavily used to stabilize the body. Yet in something like a hack squat or a leg press, the core and stability demand are completely taken away. So these are no-brainers for athletic bodybuilding. So if you add up all the points, athletic bodybuilding absolutely whoops bodybuilding in terms of athletic performance. And it shows that the fact that this was even a discussion based on this study is pretty ridiculous. And I didn't even go over the health and aesthetic benefits of athletic bodybuilding, with bodybuilders ruining their health because they're blasting steroids. And aesthetics, I don't even have to talk about this one. Just look at Leon Edwards and then look at C-Bomb. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions or future video ideas, leave them in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for more content like this.